All right, well, look at you, having no idea where you came to. My name is Laurynas. If you do not know me, if you know me, my name is still the same. I'm Laurynas from Lithuania. If you find it too hard, you can call me Bob. Has no connection to my real name. There is an English equivalent to Laurynas, which is Lawrence, or Italian Lorenzo. Same name. Probably doesn't matter. Yeah, my name is Laurynas. I come from Lithuania. We have a fairly big group here in Switzerland, in the Alps. We're planning to colonize this part of the Alps, make a little Lithuanian colony. Maybe I should be careful with those types of jokes. But you came to a workshop, not a, what you may call it, not a talk, right? So it's a workshop, so I'll try to make you speak, well, not make you, but I'll invite you to also share and speak and discuss, because otherwise you'll get really, really bored throughout the day, you'll get tired, you'll start sleeping. So I'm actually pretty fortunate to be speaking during the first workshop sessions, because you're still fairly fresh, woken up after the morning, and so I'm glad, consider it to be a real blessing. But since I will not be able to impress you with the content of my seminar, I tried impressing you with my stylish haircut. I hope you notice and appreciate it. If not, at least maybe this will impress you. This little spin. I can assure you nobody else is going to do that during other workshops, so at least you came for this. All right, so my topic for today is why should anyone care about Christianity and how to make the case for faith in today's world. During Michael's talk the first day, I heard a lot of overlap between what I'm planning to say, what maybe he's talking about during his session right now, but not quite. There is some overlap, but I'm going to take another step back, because he spoke about evangelism, then pre-evangelism, even though he doesn't like that term, plowing the soil, preparing the soil, right? So I'll focus mostly on what we may term now pre-evangelism, or the very ground, the very basics, and we'll try to probe to what that is. What is the actual basics? But before, I shared my motivation for giving this seminar, just to impress you, obviously, but now I'll want to hear your motivation for coming here. So if you can just shout out or just say it out loud, why did you decide to come to this particular workshop and not some other? Curiosity. Curiosity? Curious to see how Lithuanians look like and sound like, or the topic?
I've already seen you in the past, but curiosity related to the topic.
The topic, okay. Mm-hmm.
The dance. I think
the dance, yeah. Somebody told you about that? Let you in on that little secret? Haircut, yes. Thank you. Thank you. It's paying off already, yeah? Good. Good. Anybody else? The reason why I'm asking this is because I can modify what I'll be talking about depending on what you are going to say. Because there are certain things that you want to learn about, hear about, then I'm willing to hear that and kind of adjust the contents of this seminar towards your needs. So, there's still some room for that. Yes?
I have to do something with presuppositional apologetics?
Well, a little bit, yes, a bit. The name of Francis Schaeffer will be mentioned tonight, yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, go ahead.
Basically, my colleagues, now my former colleagues, but I'm still in touch with some of them, still working with them, having retired, they don't care about Christianity. They know I'm a Christian, especially now that I've retired and I'm doing more critical and able to spend my time relating my topic of business and marketing to Christianity, so they know what I'm doing and don't ask questions. Mm-hmm. It's not what they're against, but they just don't care.
Bingo. That's the root level, the basics, right? So right now, well, I have this thing here, and my handwriting is, I wouldn't say not good, it's terrible. So I hope you bear with me, trying to understand what I'm going to write on there. But the first thing that we heard just now regarding the situation of people's relationship to Christianity in their country. Where are you from? What country? England. Okay, I should have guessed. Okay, England. So in England, some people at least, they don't care, simply don't care about Christianity, right? So now we try to identify the situation in our context, right? And we are from different places, I assume. Is there anybody here who would be not from Europe? Well, there's some Americans probably here, right? No. One, right? Excuse me? Kazakhstan, okay. Kazakhstan, even more. Well, maybe not far away, but exotic in this case, right? All of the other ones are from Europe. Well, Europe is also not a monolith. We have our own cultures, our own history. However, ideas spread, and it seems like there might be some overlap, but there might be some things that would be specific to your particular context. Be it maybe, I don't know, you come from a culturally Catholic country, or you come from a culturally Protestant country, or maybe there are bits of your country that are culturally Catholic, and other bits are culturally Protestant. Maybe you come from a former Soviet republic, like I do, right? I mean, Lithuania is not a former Soviet republic. We have a much longer, bigger history than that. But still, for example, we would have some overlap with people from other countries that experienced communist oppression, right? So we might share some of that history because, you know, even yesterday I heard from our Romanian colleagues that there were some churches that were turned into museums of atheism, right, in Romania. That happened the same in Lithuania, in Vilnius. One of the big churches was turned into a museum for atheism. Just mind-blowing, but that was the case. You might not have had the same experience in England or the United States. I don't know how about Kazakhstan, you know, something like that, yes. So we're talking about the situation here in our countries pertaining to people's view of religion and Christianity in particular, right? So first point, people, well, just don't care, right? Others. Go ahead.
They're actively against it.
Actively against it. And you're from Germany?
Yeah.
People are against it. How so? Like, how does it look like? Verbally, I mean, are they beating you on the streets? Yeah, a bit.
Okay, so like, oh, you're a Christian, that's not a good thing, and so on, and verbal accusation and so on. Or it's just stupid, or are you left behind, you're from the last century, or and all these things. So mostly it's verbal. I didn't have encountered one that actually physical violence. So that's
all right, so over here, when people are against it, we can identify some kind of subgenres of it, if I may call it that, right? So people are against Christianity because they think it's immoral for various reasons, right? So for example, they think that Christianity may be immoral. It's bad for society.
There's also a lot of media against evangelical churches. So this is very bad if, like for example, football player, Football player, yes. Yeah, whatever. If they share their faith in the church, that's described from the media as very dangerous, and so on.
Mm-hmm. Right. We have the immorality of Christianity as people perceive it. Then there, as you said, from the last century, I mean, we go back to much older than that, right? Not to the last century, but we're much older. Just a joke which nobody gets, but...
believe it till the last century, but not now.
Oh, okay, all right, got you. So it's outdated, right? Christianity is outdated. It's not relevant to today for various different reasons. What else? Why might... Go ahead.
Some are just indifferent.
Indifferent.
So where they said that, I mean, my personal experience, like, oh, you're a Christian, oh, yeah, I mean, you're an African, so you're naturally superstitious.
Mm-hmm.
And it's good for you. You need that pro.
All right. So
So
that goes back to this first point, right?
Yes, they just
They don't care, right? So the first thing. So they simply don't care, right?
Yeah, they're just indifferent. It's okay to have it there. It works for some people.
So it's like, I'm glad for you. If it works for you, that's fine, but it's not for me.
So it doesn't. We don't need it. If you need that, prop, if you need something to keep you going, that's really good because it works for you.
Right. Guy with a lovely mustache, then there and then here, all right?
Sometimes people are against Christianity because they're hurt by it. They're hurt by their church experience.
And where you come from?
Ukraine.
Ukraine.
Yeah, in our context, it's
Yes.
about Orthodox churches, but not necessarily.
Yeah, I just wanted to tie into what this lady was saying because I'd also experienced this because I'm Irish and people would say to me, oh yeah, Irish people are naturally superstitious, you believe in fairies, you believe in
Which you do.
Use it as kind of evidence of your stupidity because you believe because you're a Christian, you must be stupid. You're Irish and you're superstitious, and yet the Irish are believing in all this nonsense, and yeah, well, it makes sense now you're a Christian too, so this is just your stupidity,
Fairies, leprechauns, and Jesus somewhere. Go ahead.
I think that's maybe a third point, is ignorance. I mean, people don't simply know what Christianity is or what Jesus said. I've experienced that a few times.
Ignorance, right? The lady over here, just a second.
I come from Romania, and in 2022, around 85% of Romanian population declare themselves as being Christians. So they think they are Christians, but they don't really know what that means, what it actually means, besides going to church for Christmas or Easter.
Right. We'll kind of tie it into the ignorance bit. Right. There was a lady here, then Sarah, then come back here,
Actually, I wanted to say pretty similar thing. Like people say, I'm already religious enough. And then, I mean, this is the case in Ukraine.
Christians they call themselves Christians, but they are not.
Yeah, so they say like, this is enough for me to go to the priest once a year and to repent my sins, and to go, in the best case, twice a year, like to Christmas and Easter, like liturgy. In the maybe most common case, once a year to the Easter liturgy. But yes, but people would already consider themselves good enough.
We go here.
Okay, I'm from Ireland. I live in France and I work in England, so next to everything. I think the point which has been raised is that a lot of people are against the church because its position on sexual ethics.
So
yeah, immoral.
So the church is immoral. I mean, because
because it's moral.
Sarah.
Yeah. So on a similar point, I would say a lot of people say it's judgmental. So they feel judged by Christians.
Right. Then there was a hand back there.
What I've noticed is people hate Christianity and form all sorts of theories because it limits your liberty. And today, in today's society, anything that limits your possibility of expressing in whatever way you want to express yourself is something that is wrong. And that's one of the big issues we have.
Ran out of paper. One does, and then here and then there.
It's a scam to steal money.
Scam to steal money, which it also is. Right. There was a. Yeah.
Well, I could go back to my Norwegian brother's point about ignorance, but you can keep that paper if you like to. And Swedish. But that people relate more to a distorted, liberalized version of Christianity rather than biblical Christianity. It becomes complicated for us to believe us to be biblical Christians. A distorted version of Christianity, if you should.
You could call it perhaps pseudo-Christianity.
Yeah.
or pseudo-Christians, right? Back there, and then you, and then Erika.
Yeah, I quote might be, I'm spiritual, but I'm not religious. I mean, there might be some sympathy. It's not really against, maybe it's a different bucket even. Maybe the third bucket, not so much against, but I think they're saying that the institution, the bureaucracy, the history, all of the baggage, all the machinery of religious faith is not what I want, and I'd rather pursue individualism and spiritual practices, maybe a little bit of this, a little bit of that, which might include some things that I do as a Christian. But it's very much handmade.
One thing I'm beginning to encounter is people that maybe even like the idea of lots of the elements of church, especially the community and the good things within it, but because they expect it to be a spiritual experience, they're kind of disappointed with God not revealing himself to them. So they're kind of like, I'm waiting, God knows where to find me, and I'm a relatively good person, but he hasn't done this for me.
Erika? Of course. I'll translate for her.
Žodžiu, kad žmonėm labai svarbu jausmas, kad jie gerai jaustųsi. Ir jie visai labai svarbu, kad iš kur jie ateina. Ateina meditacija ar dar kažkas. Ir jam, žodžiu, pasirenka tarsi, jeigu atitinka mano širdį, aš klausysiu. Jeigu ne, tai tada man to nereikia. Bet tarsi, jeigu aš galiu gauti iš meditacijos ar vaistą išgėrus kažką tai va tokio, tai tada aš, man nereikia Jėzus. Toks vaizdas, kad žmonės labai ten, kur jausmas, ten, kur širdis, jeigu jie atitinka, tarsi, aš esu kompasas ir ar tai atitinka, tai kas mano viduj, mano širdį, ar ne. Ir kad, žodžiu, kad yra mano tiesa ir arba atitinka tą tiesą, arba ne.
So what Erika is saying, and she's from Lithuania, otherwise I wouldn't be able to translate. She says that people are seeking emotional experiences, and there were some people who already mentioned that, but she noticed that, people are kind of following their heart, whatever that means, and they want to experience something relevant to them, and if they don't find it in Christianity, or at least the way they perceive it, they continue pursuing it basically elsewhere. Again?
And obviously people have competing worldviews, so there could be Muslims, encountered some in Ukraine, in my hometown. There is a big Azerbaijani diaspora, and when it comes to speaking about faith with them, they don't even want to talk about it. It is prohibited for them. Or even neo-pagans on the rise, I think not only in Ukraine, and the argument is it is not the religion, not the God that our ancestors worship, so I don't even want to listen to you.
Right?
The legitimacy of the Bible, I think, is questioned a lot in terms of the fact that you have a book that talks about slavery, about genocide, about all sorts of issues that you find, and people just think that it's completely unreasonable and almost stupid to believe in a historical document that talks about those kind of things today.
All right. I guess we could talk for the whole day about those questions, but we'll start moving, but it's a very good thing, right? So we got some ideas, and you probably felt or saw that some of your contexts kind of overlap, right? So there might be some things in your particular country that are expressed a bit more than others, but still, there's quite a lot of overlap, right? Since we cannot focus on all of them, it will be your homework to think about these things. But of course, I mean, we continue thinking about all of these things through our Christian walk and life, because we're engaging with the culture, and it's important to engage with the culture. I mean, we are a part of it, like it or not. So that's the situation, and we want to reach out to peoples, right? So all those things are important, but as I said, we'll try to go to the very, very basics. So I will not be sharing like particular methods. Well, me, I will, right? But I will not be giving formulas, because it's impossible to deal with another person as dealing with a formula. Each person is a particular individual. And one of the reasons why people are reluctant to talk about Christianity with Christians what I saw, is because they feel manipulated. They feel that you are kind of trying to sell them something, right? And for whatever reason. And maybe sometimes this is what we're trying to do. Like recently, I was at a youth conference, and you know, I was talking to a bunch of young people, Christians, that are eager to share the gospel, which is commendable. This is wonderful. This is great. But because of that, one guy, I kind of noticed his outlook towards evangelism was, for example, that he needs to befriend people so that he could share the gospel with them. And if they don't accept the gospel, well, the implication was maybe you just kind of stop the relationship because they didn't accept the gospel. Well, this is not what we should be doing, I think, because then people might feel, well, kind of manipulated or disappointed with us, and legitimately, right? So we need to pursue relationships. Well, our primary reason to pursue a relationship wouldn't be so that we could just kind of plug the gospel in there somewhere, right? We want to have that relationship with the person because we care about that person. And of course, the highest form of care is to lead that person to Jesus. People don't understand that. Sometimes we don't understand that, right? So the highest expression of our love is to lead them to Jesus. But there are now many questions and challenges related to that, because can we actually lead people to Jesus by ourselves? Well, yes and no. We are kind of instructed to do that, right? We are told to share the gospel. On the other hand, we have no power to regenerate anybody spiritually, not even ourselves. I cannot regenerate myself. This is God's work. Again, so we get into this kind of deep philosophical issue now, the free will and sovereignty of God. But, you know, if we just keep thinking about it during our life and not do anything, I mean, we're not going to go anywhere. Oh, I forgot to introduce myself a little bit. So as I said, I come from Lithuania. I came to faith when I was 26. I'm 37 right now, so almost 11 years ago. I did not grow up in a Christian family, but I grew up in a culturally Catholic country. And we gained our independence from the Soviet Union 30 plus years ago, and I was born in 88. Lithuania became independent in 91. So, you know, I did not experience all of that, what my parents experienced, but they were, you know, raised in a communist culture. My dad didn't celebrate Christmas until he met with my mom, which was at the age of 18, because it was just simple working class family. But I did not grow up in a Christian household, even though I never was an atheist myself. I always believed that there must be something, right? Must be a God. And then culturally, I would consider myself to be a Christian. I would go to church every once in a while, but not, well, fairly often even. But at the age of 26, I got converted to Christ and then started following him, and almost immediately got into Christian ministry. Even though before that, I did not even know what that was. But that was, you know, several months after that. Long story how that happened, but it did happen. So almost immediately after my conversion, I started talking to people about my newfound faith, and I experienced some challenges myself because I got converted, and then all the questions started cropping up. You know, should I believe this book? Why did Jesus have to die? What about Islam? Or what about Buddhism and other worldviews? Science and faith, all these sorts of questions. And then because I worked with Campus Crusade for Christ, or CRU, or Agape, and maybe some of you know that ministry. So I would go into university and talk to people about faith. And interestingly enough, I mean, it was very hard actually to do that, because you have to just talk to strangers about the deepest questions of life from a Christian perspective. But interestingly enough, a lot of people were open to it, and we would have like 3-hour-long conversations where I would do very little talking, and they would just pour their heart out about their families, about their experiences with Christianity, or about their relationships, whatever that may be. I just kind of felt that people just don't have anybody to talk to about serious issues. And of course, even though there's this first barrier, because there's some stranger wanting to talk to you about Christianity. Imagine, I don't know, as how it is for you in your country, but in Lithuania, we have a bunch of Mormons walking around and trying to share their faith. And I befriended a lot of Mormons, and there are a lot of interesting stories related to that also. But once I told them, you should not be treating me as your conversion project, right? And I want to convert you. I'm explicit in that because I love you and I want you to experience the truth and the love of Jesus. However, you're not a project for me. I want to seek genuine friendship. And if you don't convert, we can still continue this relationship and pursue. But I said, I don't feel that you have the same attitude towards me. Because when I try to meet with you again, it's hard to reach you via phone. I have no idea who's answering me. One time I meet with you. The next time I think I'm meeting with you, I'm meeting with totally different people and stuff like that. Because they have the whole method, how they're doing things. And if they feel like somebody's threatened, they don't allow that person to talk to that other person who's threatening them anymore, right? So they have, even though they're the nicest people, but they have a very elaborate, kind of scheme how to do things, right? So that you wouldn't threaten their faith. Very hard. And I said, I'm tired of it. I want to talk to you, as people. And some of the people had kebabs in my, house. And there was a new guy who came, and he was very on fire with, on fire. Not literally, but regarding his faith. He came into our house, and the other two guys they already knew me. We met several times. And I saw that this guy is really, he's really tense, right? He doesn't, the other guys are laid back. They're just eating cookies, drinking tea, because they already know me. They know the situation. We can just chat, we can at least try to be open towards another. And this guy, he was really, really kind of tense, so that was the situation. But sometimes I think we can treat others the way those guys treated me, even though, despite their best intentions, right? I wouldn't question their kind of morality. They're really, young guys that are trying to live a very moral life the way they understand it. And they also view that sharing the Mormon gospel, which is a different gospel from the Christian gospel, and it's not very hard to kind of check and see if that's the case, because we have the scriptures and we have their documents and we can just kind of read them and see what's in there, right? And a lot of them don't even know their faith. They're young guys, just fresh out of high school. And they just go on a mission trip and they get some training. And what's really commendable, they learn your language like in 9 months or so. They can speak your language. And very few of us are actually willing to take that step in order to evangelize somebody. So I'm not questioning that. But the problem was, and I explicitly told them that was a problem. I don't want to be your project, right? I want you to kind of be interested in me. And this is the outlook that we need to have towards others, that we are interested primarily in them, not in order so that they would just open up and we can just give them the gospel, but genuinely interested because God is at work the whole time. Now, I'm not saying that we shouldn't be using some, kind of communication methods, or we should be bad communicators or never speak about the gospel. Of course not, because I've been doing that. I've been sharing the gospel, in person, online, via radio. I host a radio show. I have a YouTube channel. There's a bunch of stuff that I do every day in order to share the gospel with people and challenge them with the gospel. But right now what I'm trying to do is kind of to avoid as much as I can the feeling that people may have that they're manipulated into believing it. That's why I always try to go back to the roots and explain why I'm doing what I'm doing, to connect the dots. And even for Christians, that might be important. That's why I wrote the master's thesis that I wrote and my doctoral thesis that I wrote. So I have a master's in religious studies and a PhD in philosophy. I'm no philosopher myself. I did my degrees in a secular university. I wanted to pursue theology, but there's nowhere to do that in Lithuania, meaning PhD level, unless you go through all the steps of the Catholic theology. So, bachelor's, master's, and only then you can go into PhD in Catholic theology. I have a bunch of friends who are Catholics. I host a radio show with a Catholic guy exploring the Bible and stuff like that. But there was nowhere in Lithuania that could do a PhD in theology, so I decided to do it in philosophy, as long as they allow me to explore the topic that I'm interested in, which was apologetics. So my master's was in humor in Christian apologetics using social media, and my doctoral thesis was in indirect and direct communication in Christian apologetics. And one of the questions that I addressed was, why are Christians doing what they're doing? Because a lot of people think it is immoral. It is immoral to kind of try to push your views onto somebody else. Just allow those people believe whatever they believe. Why should you think that you have the right to tell them what they should believe and think about the world? The problem is that everybody does that. Everybody shares their views in order so that other people may believe them, because these people believe that they are true. But people don't, they don't see the connection. They think that only Christians are doing that. The other people are just sharing what is actually true. And because Christianity is not true, and it's superstitious, and it's stupid, then you are being a bad person if you are sharing the gospel. So what I try to do in my work, and remember, it's a secular university, so it's not a seminary, nothing like that. So I just try to kind of show the reasoning behind the Christian worldview, why Christianity is so eager to share the gospel, unlike some other religions, let's say, right? Is because, and precisely because, this is one of the main ways that we love the person. Everybody agrees that we should love one another, right? Whatever that means. Now, whenever we talk about love or other things, there's always more to be unpacked, because those words, love may mean one thing to one person, another thing to another person, right? But everybody agrees, whatever their notion of love is, that we should love another person or be kind to another person, right? That people agree with. And I say, well, you can think that Christians are silly and stupid or ignorant, but even though they may be mistaken, this is their reasoning. They try to love that person. So, because if God exists, right, Christians believe that there is a way to God. And people throughout history in different cultures, they try to find those ways to God. And Christians believe that they have found that way. And the way is Jesus. So they want to introduce people to Jesus. And this is a work of love in the Christian understanding. So, well, you may feel sorry for the Christian. You may think that the Christian is ignorant or bad. But in their eyes, they're doing their best. And sometimes they're mistaken, right? So, but just cut them some slack and understand that they are trying to love you. Now, this is the theoretical part. But when we are trying to do that, trying to share the gospel, we actually need to try and love the people that we're sharing the gospel with. And if we abandon them when they don't want to hear the gospel, they will not feel loved, right? They want to be appreciated for what they are, with their flaws and with their good sides of their character and so on. So our main task is, when wanting to share the gospel, because this is the Great Commission, we are commanded to go and share the gospel with all people and even all creation, but we will not touch on that today. Our main task is to show why thinking about such matters is important, because we usually kind of jump forward and say, okay, this is what you should believe. And then we're told that, okay, let's maybe take a step back and address the questions that people have, or misconceptions, or objections to Christianity. And sometimes then we can do that. But a lot of people are simply not interested in these matters. So our main task is to show why thinking about such matters, why thinking about God is important in the first place. And then we can show how does Christianity as a worldview address those questions that arise from the first question. And then we can show why Christianity is true. So the first step, showing why it is important to speak about those questions at all. Or we may call it like waking people up to reality. Because most of the people are just going through the motions. And they try to kind of push those questions aside because they're too painful. They're too hard to think about. I worked at a high school, as a social pedagogue, if there's a word like that in English, right? I'm not sure, but I worked as some sort of a social worker at school. And I would try to, because I was not allowed to kind of proselytize, right, in class, or, talk to people about faith, directly, but I tried to make them think, not only about, what they're thinking about maths, or, their exams, or geography, whatever it may be, but to think more deeply about life. So sometimes I would give them 4 questions to think about. So the questions of origin, meaning, morality, and destiny. Origin. Where did everything come from? Everything that exists. Where did it come from? Now, what's the meaning of life? And how do we know? Then, is there such a thing as good and bad? Is there objective morality? And how do we know that? And what's the destiny of a human person individually and for all of us as a human race? So without sharing the gospel, I'm trying to make people think about the deep questions of life, because usually when they're doing that, they're doing it alone in their room at night after a breakup, or after, an argument, or after they get a bad grade, whatever that may be. They're crying and thinking about that alone. And some people despair. Lithuania, we have lots of people, young people, taking their lives, unfortunately, because they don't find the answer to those existential questions. And they cannot go to their parents and ask the questions, because parents, they don't know how to answer them. They try to push those questions aside so that they could just go through the motions. And that's it. And when they asked those 4 questions in one of the classes, one of the students, a girl, said, "But why should we ask those questions at all?" I said, "Why do you think that? You think they're not important?" She said, "But what if there are no answers?" And this is very important, because if there are no answers to these questions, no good answers, then life is absurd. It leads to despair. And maybe it's just better to go through the motions and not think about those questions at all. Because if there's nothing or nobody to answer those questions for us, then it's terrible. And the French existentialists especially understood that. But they did not take their worldviews to their logical conclusion. Maybe Nietzsche did. He was not French, but still, But Sartre, Camus, and others, right, they said, okay, life is absurd because there is no God. Life is absurd. However, let's pretend that life has meaning, and they offer different ways how to deal with life, right? Maybe live for others or love another person. Maybe seek your, go after your heart wherever your heart takes you, and things like that. But so what is our job now in this case? Now I'm asking you, because I talked for too long. So when you hear a question, well, not a question, but a concern coming from a young person like that, but maybe we shouldn't care about those questions because there may be no answers. What may be your response in this particular situation? What would you say? The question is, we have a situation. A young person says, we shouldn't be thinking about these deep worldview questions like origin, meaning, morality, destiny, because if there are no answers, good answers to those questions, we're doomed. So what do you say to that person? Do you spin? No.
What if? So exploring, what if this is true, and you just share your own experience? Well, it depends on the person. I think some people have the more sort of rational approach, but from my experience, the personal experience approach is what I'm more comfortable with, as in sharing and then say, what if this is an answer? Just explore it, what if?
Well, basically you're saying that she says, what if there are no answers? And you say, what if there are? Yeah. And here's one. Yeah. You should explore it, okay? Go ahead.
I would say you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. And I try to go towards the gospel, and the reason why I say this is because I love apologetics and I love debating, is what I did. I went to debating, and that was my life for a long time. But what I've noticed is I've spent so much time having arguments, apologetic arguments with people, and it just feels like we're both in our own towers, throwing noodled arrows at each other, and nothing works, nothing sticks. And the truth in 1 Corinthians 2 is that all these things of the gospel are perceived with the Holy Spirit, and unless you have the Holy Spirit, they're madness. So me trying to convince rationally something to somebody, it is madness unless the Holy Spirit makes it clear to you. I get to a point where I wonder, is it worth it to try and spend so much time trying to rationalize these kind of questions rather than trying to implement sharing the gospel through them? I use these questions just as a means to get to the gospel and just pray that the Holy Spirit will open the person's eyes to understand the truth. Because otherwise, we don't have it.
And my answer to your question would be, unless it was a rhetorical question, but yes, but, and I addressed it in my dissertation, because I kind of disagree with that. I mean, I feel the sentiment, because sometimes what you're saying, you know, happens in my life as well. However, I think that arguments can be important, but, and I'll tell you, you know, the way I kind of made sense all of that in my head and in my dissertation when trying to answer this objection from the Christian side. So maybe we should just drop the arguments because they don't seem to work. And another person that the main guy that I researched in my dissertation was Søren Kierkegaard from Denmark. So he's, you know, famous for the phrase leap of faith, which is quite often misunderstood. But I try to portray Kierkegaard as an apologist who is not anti-intellectual, but just using a different method, which may be important. But yes, sometimes what you say, it does happen. However, I see a point in sharing arguments with people in a particular context, but they only work if the Holy Spirit uses them. Because
that's what I mean. I'm not saying, you know, chuck away all the arguments and let's just talk about mysticism. Is use rationality, but as a gateway towards the gospel. It's connected towards the gospel and find the reasons to which, and that's what I believe. I believe that the Bible is reasonable enough and has enough rationality within it that you can connect any question of humankind to the answer of the Bible, if you're skilled enough to find a way to do it.
Erika, and then there were some people over here, and then there, and then here.
Aš manau, kad mes, kiekvienas žmogus, aš kaip galvoju, kad turi neišvengiamybę susiduria su tuo klausimu, kas yra Jėzus, kadangi Jėzus yra kino istorija, tai man labai patinka Liuso atsakymas ir aš jį naudoju, kuo mes laikome Jėzų. Ir Jėzus pagrindinis klausimas, kuo tu mane laikai mokiniams. Tai ar jis yra beprotis, ar melagis, ar Dievo sūnus. Tai man kažkaip tas labai vertai žmonės.
So Erika just quoted the C.S. Lewis's trilemma. Is Jesus the liar, lunatic, or Lord? Because a lot of people have heard the name of Jesus, at least in our country. You know, there are some countries where people maybe have never heard about Jesus, but there are not very many of them, right? In our day and age, with internet and things like that. So a lot of people, and even a lot of religions, incorporate Jesus into themselves. So we are kind of faced with that question of, so who is this guy? Because in Lithuania, as in, you know, the most of the Western world, we count our years from the birth of Jesus. Even though there was a slight miscalculation, so it doesn't matter, right? But we count, I mean, the year 0 is supposed to be the year that Jesus was born. Or some say, you know, we live in the common era. So 2025 common era. But what's common about this era? It's Jesus that's common, right? But so Eric is saying that maybe, you know, try to talk about who Jesus is, because a lot of people heard about him and have their ideas about him. And here, and then here.
So, I'm going to share with you a real-life case about my dear friend in Christ, who was a student in a university and had the same problem. Life is meaningless, and therefore I feel very miserable because of it. And so, one guy came to the university, gave a lecture, and they had a talk, and my friend shared with him this problem that he has. Life is meaningless, and the guy said, "Oh, I know what meaning of life is, but you're not ready yet to hear it." And this friend of mine spent the next months chasing this guy with questions, questioning, what do you mean? What is the meaning of, I want to know it, please tell me. And then, yeah.
€5.
Just after months of this, you know, my friend, you know, chasing this guy, that guy shared the gospel with him, so, and my friend converted, and that guy became his pastor. So a very interesting case to use, maybe. Well, you're not ready, I know the truth, but you're not ready to listen, and the person is provoked.
Go ahead. Thank you.
I think this question, the thing that I would say is, you're making life choices anyway, as if you believe that something is true, whether that is materialism or other. So if you're making those life choices as if something were true, don't you want to at least think about it explicitly? And just encourage people to think that there is something that they believe in, whether it's what I want or money or relationships. So encouraging just explicitly thinking about it.
I would question the assumption that there is no objective answer to these. So if someone comes and says there can't be an answer, I would ask him, what does he mean? Does he mean an objective, that maybe an existential answer could be given, or does he mean it's too big of a question that reaches, and I would push him to encounter it? I actually don't believe that there are no really answerable questions. And I will also point at the importance of the answer of these questions.
Danius, and then we will come back to
Okay.
very polite.
Yeah, drawing from Socrates, he said the unexamined life is a life not living. So that isn't pointing to the gospel, but it does give maybe a little bit of credibility to open up to some conversation on meaning and so forth, reflection. I find it interesting that I think in the 15 or so points that we made against Christianity, there's a word that isn't on that list, and that's Jesus. But it did come up a little bit in the solution. And so I think then going on from maybe exploring the meaning from a secular viewpoint, maybe from the ancients, move toward the gospel in the way that we discussed a little bit, I guess
So you may be saying that people are not against Jesus, right? And he may be our way in. One of the challenges that I find with that is because people in Lithuania, for some reason, quite a lot of them think that Jesus never existed. For some reason, they think he's like a fairy tale, right? I mean, and they don't bother even to look into it. And when I try to kind of make a case for Jesus, they're not interested because they think what's the word? I'm biased, right? I'm biased, and of course, I mean, I will believe that he exists, but I'm trying to trick them into believing that Jesus really existed. And even though they portray themselves as rational people who believe the evidence, they don't care about the evidence. So what do we do in this case? I mean, but we'll keep on exploring that here, and then Danius, and then maybe somebody else.
Not afraid to find out, like, what is the worst thing that will happen if you find out that there is no meaning in life? Because many people, like some of the people, really push those questions really away because they're afraid to find out that their life has no global meaning, and this is why they satisfy themselves with smaller, like, they are not unmeaningful, but I mean like family, books, hobbies, and so on, and in which they find their small meaning. And these are people who are really afraid to find out that there is no sense. But there are also, and maybe I haven't figured out yet what I would do in this case, but I also have friends who are atheists and who basically believe that there is no meaning beyond this life. So they are basically, unfortunately, friends, and most of the atheist friends whom I meet right now are not truly ready to explore if there is a possibility of life beyond death, for example. But I feel that there are people who, if somehow touched or convinced to explore another possibility of what if there is a greater meaning, they would not be afraid because they already know that otherwise their life makes no global sense, and they have learned to live with that already. So, but I mean, I would maybe have a bigger problem with people who are really afraid to touch the unknown, because that would mean leaving the comfort, and maybe they would be afraid that their life would be not as pleasurable as it is now. So maybe I would really love to figure out how to answer people, or how to deal with people who are really afraid that their life will become worse until they start figuring out what is their global meaning of life and sense.
Okay, we'll try to address that at the very end, Danius, and then here.
I think understanding or this tension between arguments or our creativity to share the gospel and supernatural work of God for a person to become a believer is very important. We always live in this, and I really like C.S. Lewis one thought he said about that. Although arguments do not create certainty or conviction, their absence destroys the faith. So it's always danger for us to slip to one side or another.
Erika, and then,
Aš gal sakyčiau taip, kad kaip mes galim pažinti, kad nieko nėra, kaip mes galim pažinti, kad kažkas yra. Tuo pačiu pažinimu, tai pasaulio mintis, jeigu nieko nėra, mes nieko neprarandame, bet jeigu yra, tai mes prarandam labai daug ir gal tada verta pabandyti, kaip sako, tikiu, kad pažinčiau. Ir tas irgi toks kelias, kad tu gali, kaip mes maži vaikai pasitikim savo tėvais, ir kažką tai darom taip nesusimąstydami, paskiau mes pamatom, kad taip yra, ne? Tai čia va tas pats žingsnis, kad galbūt verta tikrai pabandyti.
So she's referring to the Pascal's wager and saying that, well, there may be nothing, but if there is something, it might be worth figuring it out, and it might be something so big and so important that it will outweigh all of your concerns.
Just about the answer of the questions, I don't know if this is related only for the younger generation, but my feeling is the people really have the answer to the question, that it's very relative, and they don't think about making it coherent in meanings. So it's like everyone has its own, you can believe, like, I don't know, whether it's Big Bang, and you have this materialistic answer for the origin, and then you have very personal way of viewing morality and everything is okay. So it's like they don't think about making connection between them, so they just don't think about making it coherent. So, but my feeling is like every person already answered the question in its own way, so it means themselves that this is okay. And maybe this is like the case sometimes I find myself making is like, but do you realize that maybe we need to make something coherent, like something that actually can hold everything in one thing? And not a lot of people are like willing to do that. I mean, with this modern spirituality and everything, so you can have everything mixed up, like a little bit of Buddhism, a little bit of this kind of church, and and I'm also been in science, so it's like everything mixed up, and it's okay the way you live your life. So I don't know if you have also this type of experience with people, but yeah, that is at least in Spain or.
It's a great segue to actually. You want to say something also? Okay, a couple more people. Okay, so we'll take both of your comments and then we'll kind of start wrapping it up. And I'll try to touch on, or try to kind of refer to whatever you were telling me about, because I also noticed the same thing.
Thank you. When I do apologetics, I quite often use Elijah's method on Mount Carmel, trying to challenge people not to try to hobble on both sides, but take a stand. If Baal is God, follow him. If the Lord is God, follow him. So people may try to reject that there are answers, but there are answers, and they're different. The materialistic worldview is different from the biblical one. So try it out, wrestle with it, and take a stand.
And then we'll finish with Rod then.
I think I might take the Pascal wedges lane, and I would ask them a question like, why do they think there are no good answers? And I try to understand like what are the kind of answers they explored and why do they think they are not good. Like as C.S. Lewis said, like if Christianity is true, it's of utmost importance, and if it is false, it is of no importance. So like it's like black and white, like there is no grey in between. So like to challenge them to take the leap of faith and explore Christianity and see whether there are good answers.
So it seems like a lot of people kind of like C.S. Lewis over here, regardless of where they came from. Well, it's a good thing that he'll be joining us right now. No, so Rod, we'll finish with you.
Yeah, you said in the small group of philosophers that you have a radio program that is built according to this unbelievable but just in Bradley. Could you share a few steps? What did you do to start this, and how would you recommend to others to start similar?
Well, maybe I was just a bit naive, and the kind of person I am is I just tend to do things without overthinking them. and sometimes they don't work out, and it would have been wiser not to do it. And sometimes they do work out precisely because of this reason, because I didn't overthink it. So I just tend to do things. And the way it happened is because, I mean, well, I came to faith. I started working with Agape. Apologetics came into kind of my radar. Started watching Veritas Forum on YouTube, then found all sorts of different apologists. Then a new world opened up before me. So, I mean, there are just so many good answers. And Christianity as a worldview makes the most sense of my lived experience and all the questions that I have. And when I go to the university, people ask questions and I have good answers to them. They never heard anything like it. And so that happened. And then I wanted to kind of reach out to people that are non-believers. And I started listening to Unbelievable by Justin Brierley on Premier Christian Radio. Well, it was already a podcast in the United Kingdom. And he was hosting discussions, like friendly discussions between believers and non-believers, or like, let's say, Christians and Buddhists and, whatever they may be. And I thought, it would be cool to do such a thing. And I started I got in touch with, well, it was the other way around. I knew a guy who was the head of a small evangelical, well, it's ecumenical, but most of the people that host radio shows there are evangelicals. So he's like the director of this, I think it's a part of Trans World Radio. I'm not sure if you've heard of it, but in Lithuania there's like a branch. It's called XFM. And there was just, a very small radio station. He said, wouldn't you like to do a show of some kind, talking about Christianity, because they lack volunteers? I said, okay, maybe. So I thought maybe I could just copy whatever Justin Brierley is doing and do it myself. So I did. But our pool of people who could be talking about such issues in Lithuania is fairly small. We are a country of 2.8 million, something like that. And Christianity, we have less than 1% of evangelicals in Lithuania. Very, very small number. A lot of people who claim to be Catholics, but as you said, I mean, if you would ask them a follow-up question, do you believe that Jesus is alive? There was a survey done, and half of them would say no. So it's just, cultural Christianity, but that's not only related to Catholicism, but anywhere where Christianity becomes cultural. As for Søren Kierkegaard, he was fighting against cultural Christianity of Denmark, because in order to be a Danish citizen, you needed to be a Christian. And he was like he didn't want to be a pastor. Well, he kind of wanted, but then he didn't want, because that means you're just working for the government. And so he was struggling with that question. How do you make people kind of wake up to the reality of real Christianity and real Jesus, that it costs a lot to follow him? And his life kind of reflected that. So basically, this guy, asked me if I would like to do the show, and I said, okay, and I just started doing it. And the first guest that I invited was a member of the Atheist Society, a skeptical society in Lithuania. So in preparation, I read Dawkins's God Delusion, which for me seemed to be an extremely poorly, not written. I mean, he's a good writer, but in terms of philosophy, it seemed like it's just poor. Right? I mean, I would stand up and pace around my room, because he wouldn't understand the basic tenets of Christianity and ideas. And he would just attack false things, right? And one of these kind of main things in his book is like, well, if God created everything, who created God? So, I mean, he may be a brilliant biologist, but I don't know biology, so I don't know anything, right? But he must be a brilliant mind in his own field. But when it comes to dealing with Christianity, he makes a caricature of it and just attacks that version of it. But a lot of people follow him and do the same thing. Well, even though the heyday of New Atheism is kind of past, so I started doing that, and then I started inviting all sorts of other guests, atheists, people who worship Krishna. In Lithuania, we call them Krishnaitai. I don't know how you call them in your countries, but Hare Krishnas, maybe we could call them that. I had Mormons. I had all sorts of different people on my show. Sometimes I would discuss questions myself, but then that would require a lot of preparation. So eventually, I kind of couldn't keep up. So I decided to kind of step back and moderate between people that kind of already know what they're talking about. So that required, so that's like just a technical part of it when you're hosting a radio show. So I just stopped kind of discussing myself and invited other people to do the discussion, and I would moderate that. But yeah, this is how it kind of started. Right, wrapping up. We have a bunch of things, so I will share some ideas so that we wouldn't be kind of just talking about it, but would come out of this room with maybe not particularly a method, but a view of doing things while understanding why we're doing them, right? So I will refer to Socrates quickly, to Soren Kierkegaard, and to Francis Schaeffer, because it's kind of it's fitting, because he had this L'Abri thing going on, not too far from here, even though when you're driving through the mountains, it's always far. God, it's so far to drive. I mean, we drove 280 kilometers. We drove for 6 hours with the baby. So that was like, in Lithuania, 3 hours. You're done, flat. Of course, much more beautiful, though. But I will refer to them quickly and try to wrap up. Right. So the reason why we are doing what we're doing, why we want to share about those questions with people and kind of talk to them, is because this is the way we love them, but they do not understand that, and sometimes we don't understand that, right? So we need to find a way to connect the dots to people and say, okay, this is what we are trying to do. I mean, I care about you, and well, for example, you can use this example, even though it's not perfect, but some people have used it in the past, so I assume it may be good, right? If you find medicine that can treat an incurable disease of some sort, it would be moral for you to want to share this news with other people and say, look what I found. This may help you. So this is similar to our situation. We found the answer to life's deepest questions. We want to share that. You may think we are mistaken, but at least explore. I am doing it so that you would know life. Of course, I mean, they don't have that experience. For them, it may be nonsense, but at least they need to understand our motive, that we are not trying to kind of manipulate them. We're not trying to force our worldview on them, but we are asking the question ourselves, okay, what is true reality? Or as James Sire says, what is the really real? What is at the bottom of everything? Wouldn't you like to know? And when we probe that question and we find that there is ultimate reality, and that ultimate reality is personal, and not only that this ultimate reality is personal, but this ultimate reality became a human being, even though this is mind-blowing, right? And we cannot grasp it with our intellects. However, I mean, this is what we found to be the case. So wouldn't you like to explore that? Wouldn't it be cool that, I mean, there is meaning to life. There is purpose to your life. And we don't have to kind of just wonder about those questions, you know, throughout our lives, trying to see if there are answers, but actually find those answers, because we are asking these questions. Okay, is there a God? If there is a God, is he personal? If he's personal, does he speak? If he spoke, how did he speak? So I usually, when I talk to people, I try to lead them through this process, right? Trying to understand what is really real, and the ultimate reality is God, and all of the questions of meaning and purpose are related to God. One of the professors that I work with, his name is Naglis Kardelis, and he says this, that the question of God is the same as the question of the meaning and purpose of life, just asked differently. But people don't understand the connection. They think, you know, well, I either believe in God or I don't believe in God. I have lots of beliefs, and one of those beliefs is related to God. So I put this belief of God here in the shelf, so the shelf is either full or empty. But this is not the case, as the French existentialists understood. The answer to this question changes everything. If there is a God, there may be purpose to life, there may be meaning of life, you may understand something about reality and all of those things, right? But if there is no God, there is no purpose. Life is absurd. This is terrible. But now, answering this girl's question, okay, one of the approaches that we could take would be, again, using the Socratic method to ask another question, okay? But she says, right, but what if there are no answers? And we heard one of the questions that we could ask, but what if there are, right? And there are other questions that we could ask, but we could ask, for example, but how do you feel? How do you feel inside of you? Should there be meaning to life? Is life meaningful? And the honest question is that all of us have this intrinsic kind of, I don't know, not belief. It's hard to kind of even describe what that is, because it's not purely rational. But just we have this sense, overwhelming sense, that there should be something. That's why people say, I'm spiritual, but not religious, because they feel that there should be something. And we say, I agree, there should be something. So what if there is, and we can actually find out that there is something? And not only that, and then we can kind of start sharing about Christianity. So when I ask those questions, okay, Origin meaning morality and destiny. And sometimes in the class, for example, I ask people to write down their answers to those questions. And most of the time, when I collect them, they're incoherent. They contradict one another. People don't see it. But when writing them out, they start to think about those questions for the first time kind of normally. And they see on a piece of paper, or you can just talk to them, whether or not their answers are coherent and whether they make sense. So I don't critique their answers. I don't say, oh, this is a bad answer, or this is this, or this is that. So I say, those answers that you just provided me, they describe your worldview, because all of us understand the world in some way. All of us have lenses through which we see the world and understand it. It's impossible not to have a worldview. All of us have it. Now, the question is there such a thing as the correct worldview? Or at least can we get to the correct worldview as close as we can? And I then say that, well, Christianity is a worldview. It's a lens through which I see the world. So let me share with you what is the Christian worldview, answering these questions. And then I can share the gospel by answering these questions and ask, does it make sense? For me, it does. This is why I believe it. It wasn't because I was indoctrinated, but this actually makes sense for me theoretically, intellectually. On the other hand, it doesn't only make sense for me intellectually, but experientially as well. I've lived it for 10 years. And it always makes sense. It's experientially adequate. It delivers, right? But, and this is not a great sales pitch, if you want to call it that, it's extremely hard. As one of my guests that I interviewed said, being a Christian is hard, being a good Christian is impossible. So, of course, we're not talking about salvation here and that Jesus saves and he's our ultimate savior, not that, right? But the Christian life may be hard. It is hard because you understand sin differently, right? Before that, you were not reacting to sin that way. Now you are. You may feel guilty, then you find forgiveness, but it may be harder. You may experience difficulty in your family, in culture, in your decisions, how you deal with money, all of that. However, and then what I say in these situations, I say that, but think about all of the things that are worthwhile in your life. Is any of them easy? Relationship. If you want to have a good relationship, hard. You want to become a good musician, hard. You want to be an athlete, hard. Everything that is worthwhile is hard. So why should we think that faith should be easy? However, I say, but if it's true, it's worth everything, right? So these are the things, well, I mean, let me 2 more minutes if I may, and then we'll finish. Because the bell is ringing 2 minutes till 12, so I have 2 more minutes. Now, the best approach that I found in these situations is to ask as many questions as you can and refrain from speaking until you are probed and sought after and things like that, because we tend to speak a lot and listen very little. And most of the time when people talk, if you ask good questions, they make connections themselves. And you can lead them to the gospel by just asking questions. This is the Socratic approach. Making them rethink their presuppositions about life, about worldview, and stuff like that. So even when people ask me a question, so what is the gospel? And I say, why are you asking? Even then, I kind of try to restrain myself from answering, because even then they may not be interested. So ask until the person is really interested, and then you get a chance to talk about it. When sharing arguments or when sharing stories, whatever, it's impossible to convince another person existentially that Christianity is true. So we just rely on the Holy Spirit, that He is doing the work. Doesn't matter we're preaching or giving arguments. That's why I think arguments are important, because the Holy Spirit uses them, not somebody else. And Schaeffer calls like making people think about their presuppositions, taking the roof off. So they need to understand that, you take the roof off and the reality falls on them. If there is no God, life is absurd. But then you reconstruct and say, but there is a God, therefore life is not absurd, and therefore you can know Him, and things like that. And Søren Kierkegaard says that indirect communication is crucial in trying to convey religious truth. And there is no method, like the exact method of indirect communication. But he says that we need to pay attention to the ways that we try to convey the gospel, not directly by just speaking the words, but by different various means. And he employed lots of pseudonyms when writing his works. Humor is one of the ways that of indirect communication, because sometimes you can write like a 10-page tractate on, I don't know, arguments for Christianity, or send a person one meme, and that one meme says more than that 10-page treatment of a particular subject, right? So those are the things that I encourage you to think about, and just helping people understand why we're doing what we're doing, and actually waking them up to reality that they need to think about the question of God, and then we can start building from that, addressing their objections, challenges, and so on, and then eventually sharing the gospel. But we should first of all try to make them and kind of move them from indifferentism towards actually caring about the question of God, because it has actual implications towards how you live your life, right? Thank you so much.